What does it really mean to bounce back when the whole world is watching you before you've even fully grown into your career? In modern tennis, that question isn't just philosophical anymore. It's personal, constant, and unavoidable. Every match becomes a statement, every dip in form becomes a narrative, and every young player who shows promise is suddenly expected to carry momentum like a finished product. Right now, that conversation quietly surrounds Alexandra Eala as she heads into Stuttgart, trying to reset, refocus, and find something that often matters more than results alone: rhythm, belief, and a sense of control over her own story. Stuttgart, officially Stuttgart, isn't just another stop on the calendar. It's a place where expectations meet reality. And for many rising players, it becomes a kind of test not just of skill, but of mental endurance. The tournament itself, the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix, has a reputation for attracting elite competition and early season pressure. It's where form is questioned, momentum is built, and where young players often find out how loud the professional tour can really get. But before we talk about Stuttgart as a stage, it's worth stepping back and asking, why does a rebound even need to exist in the first place? The idea of a rebound in modern tennis. In simple terms, a rebound suggests recovery after a setback, a return to form after disappointment. But in professional tennis, especially for younger players, it's rarely that clean or linear. For someone like Eala, every result is often interpreted through a bigger lens. Not just did she win or lose, but what does this mean for her trajectory? That kind of framing can be both inspiring and heavy. On one hand, it reflects belief. People see potential. They see a future top player. But on the other hand, it compresses time. It expects development to happen faster than it naturally does. And that's where Stuttgart becomes interesting, not because it defines her career, but because it reflects a much larger pattern in tennis: the constant demand to prove yourself again, even when you're still building your foundation. Young players and the pressure of being the future. One of the most misunderstood parts of professional tennis is how quickly potential turns into expectation. For a young athlete like Alexandra Eala, the transition into higher-level competition isn't just about adjusting to stronger opponents. It's about adjusting to identity. You stop being a promising junior and start being a player people expect results from. That shift changes everything. A missed shot isn't just a technical mistake anymore, it becomes a moment that people discuss online. A loss isn't just part of development, it becomes a question mark attached to your progress. And this is where Stuttgart matters psychologically. Events like the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix bring together experienced champions and rising players in the same draw. The contrast is constant. You're not just competing against opponents, you're competing against perception. For young athletes, that can feel like playing two matches at once, one on the court and one in everyone's mind. The mental weight behind finding form. When we say a player is chasing a rebound, it sounds simple, like they just need one good win to reset everything. But form in tennis isn't just technical. It's emotional. It's rhythm-based. It's confidence-based. A player might be hitting the ball well in practice, but still feel hesitant in matches. Or they might be physically ready but mentally stuck in the last result they wish they could redo. This is where Stuttgart becomes less about the surface or the draw and more about timing. Early season tournaments often expose where a player really is, not where their highlights suggest they should be, but where their current mental and physical state actually sits. For someone in Eala's position, that means every match becomes a reference point. Not just for ranking movement, but for internal recalibration. Am I trusting my game? Am I hesitating under pressure? Am I playing to win or playing not to lose? Those questions don't appear on scoreboards, but they decide outcomes more often than people realize. Media attention and the illusion of constant readiness. Another layer that often gets overlooked is how quickly media attention accelerates for young players. The moment a player breaks through or shows promise, the coverage doesn't wait for stability. It expands immediately. Articles, highlights, comparisons, predictions, they all arrive at once. For Alexandra Eala, that means her career is not just followed, but interpreted in real time. And interpretation can be dangerous when it replaces patience. Because tennis development is not linear. There are weeks where everything clicks and months where nothing does. That's normal. But public narratives often struggle with normality. They prefer direction, momentum, certainty. So when a young player enters a tournament like the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix, the expectation is often silent but present. Show progress, show growth, show something that confirms the story people already started writing. But athletes are not story arcs. They're individuals moving through unpredictable cycles. Social media, constant connection, constant pressure. If previous generations of tennis players dealt mainly with journalists and post-match interviews, today's athletes deal with something far more persistent: direct public feedback. Social media has changed the emotional environment of sport. Every performance is instantly analyzed by thousands of voices. Some supportive, some critical, some purely reactive. For a young player, that means there is no real separation between competition time and public reaction time. Everything blends together. Even a well-played match can come with negative comments about 1 or 2 points. Even progress can be overshadowed by comparison. And perhaps the most difficult part is that social media doesn't just reflect performance, it often distorts it. A close loss might be seen as failure. A tough draw might be ignored. A good opponent might become an excuse instead of a context. Over time, this creates a subtle but real psychological weight, the feeling that you are always being evaluated, even when you are not competing. For players like Eala, managing that noise becomes part of the job. Not officially. Not in training plans. But in reality, it sits in the background of everything. Privacy in a public career. There is also a quieter conversation happening in modern sports: privacy. Young athletes grow up in a world where their training, travel, and even casual moments can be shared instantly. Fans want connection, and media wants access. But athletes are still people trying to develop without constant visibility. The challenge is that visibility is often mistaken for availability. Just because a player is visible online doesn't mean they should be emotionally accessible all the time. And just because fans feel connected doesn't mean boundaries disappear. For rising players in tournaments like Stuttgart, maintaining that boundary is part of survival. Not in a dramatic sense, but in a practical one. Because tennis seasons are long. Emotionally, they are even longer. And without some level of personal space, recovery becomes harder and pressure becomes louder. What rebound actually looks like. A rebound is often imagined as a sudden turnaround, one match that flips everything. But in reality, it's usually quieter. It might be a better decision at 4-4 in a set. A calmer reaction after losing a break. A willingness to stick with a game plan instead of abandoning it under pressure. It might not even show up in results immediately. For Alexandra Eala, a rebound in Stuttgart doesn't necessarily mean winning the tournament. It might mean leaving with clearer patterns, better emotional control, or renewed confidence in certain parts of her game. And those things matter more than they look, because they build the foundation for the next tournament and the one after that. Stuttgart as a testing ground, not a verdict. The value of the Stuttgart event has always been its intensity. The Porsche Tennis Grand Prix brings together players who are either in form, returning from setbacks, or trying to establish consistency on a demanding stage. That mix creates something important: contrast. And contrast is where learning happens. For younger players, facing experienced opponents early in the clay season is less about immediate success and more about exposure to the level required to succeed long-term. It shows what needs improvement without words. It exposes gaps without criticism. It simply reveals reality. And sometimes, that's more valuable than a win. The bigger picture: development in public. When we talk about players like Alexandra Eala, it's easy to focus on rankings, results, and headlines. But the deeper story is about development happening in public view. Most careers in most fields allow for private mistakes. Sport doesn't. Every adjustment is visible. Every slump is discussed. Every improvement is compared. That creates a unique kind of pressure, not just to succeed, but to appear like you are always progressing, even when progress is internal and slow. And yet, that's exactly where resilience is built. Not in perfect wins, but in imperfect weeks where players keep showing up anyway. Why this moment matters beyond tennis. At first glance, Stuttgart is just another tournament in a long calendar. A clay event in early season. A stop between bigger goals. But moments like this matter because they reflect something universal, the process of trying again when expectations don't match reality yet. Everyone experiences that in some form: students, professionals, artists, athletes. The difference in tennis is that it happens publicly, in real time, under global attention. So when we watch a young player chasing a rebound, we are not just watching sport. We are watching adaptation. We are watching emotional management. We are watching identity being shaped under pressure. And maybe that's why these moments stick with us more than we realize. Because they remind us that growth is not a straight line, even when the world expects it to be. Final reflection. A rebound in Stuttgart won't be defined by one match or one headline. It will be defined by how a player responds to discomfort, how they handle expectation, and how they carry lessons forward into the rest of the season. For Alexandra Eala, and for many like her, the real challenge is not just competing, but staying steady while everyone else is watching for change. And maybe the most important question is not whether the rebound happens today or tomorrow, but whether the environment around young athletes allows enough patience for it to happen at all. Because in the end, tennis is not only about who rises fastest. It is also about who is allowed the time to grow. Before we finish, here are a few questions to think about. What do we expect more from young athletes: performance or patience? Can a player truly fail, or are they just in different stages of development? And how much of a player's journey should belong to the public versus themselves?